Hello, hello. Let's get this party started. This is episode 29. And today is a day that, if you couldn't tell, I've been kind of putting off. We just keep tinkering, but it's time to get down to the brass tacks. We are doing EQ compression. We're basically going over the whole project. We're not looking to do anything for style or taste. We're not like, oh, we really want... It's really just eliminating what we don't need out of the EQ and just providing us a little bit of compression just so we kind of have a nice even ceiling on each of the performances. We're not trying to crush anything. We're not trying to do anything overwhelming. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it needs to be done. So here we are. This is like the music equivalent of digging a trench, and we got our shovels today. So let's go ahead and hop right in. Let's start off with, well, should we just start at the top? Let me just go through the synth bass stem that we were using here. That's the sound right there. And without further ado, hello EQ. Matter of fact, I'm almost thinking about it. If I bypass the EQ, nice. I could set it to other channels, and it's already bypassed, which would be nice because we want to know. I could probably have set that up a little better to start, but alas, here we are. Sidechain kick is not going to get any processing. We want that as it is, just because it's not actually making any audible noise. It's just sending a signal to automate something else. We really don't need to do anything to that. It's not going to be a net benefit for the production. Oh my gosh, here we go. And we did do a little EQ on these. There's a little shelving, but we'll just go over the top again. Just treat it like it's its own thing. Which, if you have an issue with always going in and continuously backtracking and changing instead of it just being like, okay, we're switching over, then maybe you'd want to like freeze these so you don't have any of the FX chain to worry about or to mess with, to fiddle with. But no big deal. So let's bring it back to where we started. We're going to go ahead and unbypass that. And it's a whole lot going on there. Specifically this last one. That is the one with screams. So there's a little bit of fizzle on the top. I just want to see whether that's lost in the beginning. So we're definitely taming a little bit there, but like I said, it's just kind of like a hot sizzle. It's not really something that's it's nothing integral to the sound. Now this bass, though, that looks like a different story. We're still getting a little bit of a low end. If I cut it around 100, I'm thinking that's a safe place to do it. This is such an ugly sample. There's not really a lot of great places to cut, just because it's all kind of meant to be scratchy and nasty. I felt like I was getting a little whistling in this range. So here's without. Here's with. And if it sounds like nothing's changed, it's because very little has changed, and that was our goal. We're really just removing, and especially on the sub of that, there's a lot of sound going on that's not actually assisting the goal of this sonically. And sometimes you can change when you start putting things back in the mix. Like, let's say I play this with everything else, and all of a sudden now I'm like, where'd the guts go? It's like, which I don't think is going to be the case, but you know, sometimes things act differently with other things. So you have to keep that in mind as you go through. Hey, it's okay to change things a little bit after the fact, but this is pretty much rinse and repeat. We're going to go through all of this with the EQ, and then we'll do it with the compression. Oh, man, would it be better just to set the compression while we have it? Look at all the EQs, and then we'll go back over. And again, the compressors are super light. It's nothing. It's nothing that's going to make a major difference to the whole track. We were just trying to get a good idea of what it do. Here's another good one. So now we're on the string drone. Pardon me. So let's open up the EQ. Another concern is it was better exemplified on the other one, but on that synth bass texture thing, that blah, on that part, it changed throughout each strike. It was much more mellow, and then it brought out the highs in the last one, so that's why we used the last one. Now with something like this, it's pretty consistent through the whole thing, so we could pretty much take our pick. And I could hear we injured the low cello part, so we just opened it up a little more. Now let's see. I don't think a low pass would be great. I think we're probably safe. We're like right there, so. And again, it doesn't sound majorly different. We're not changing anything fundamental about it. Something funky about that. What we're doing here is just scanning. We're just listening for anything unpleasant that we can go ahead and drop just a little bit. And I find less is generally effective. That you don't need to do a whole lot. When we go in with the compressor, we're kind of taking down the tops. So what this is doing is it's just making sure that all of the rough frequency. I guess you can't see. I'm pointing to a screen. You can't see. The compressor is going to be going along and taking down some of the top. So if we imagine like we got like a little bit harder ceiling on it, and then we have these ducked out, the average will still feel like the bulk of it will be like these sections that aren't ducked. So we don't need to cut a whole lot because it just needs to be a little bit under where it was. That's all. Let's take it here. Of course, it's barely piercing through in this section. Alright, so that was the string drone. Let's go ahead and move on to the texture here. And it's all about this. And what I liked about this texture is I like that it panned across. I thought that was kind of interesting. And it does this little flutter, which is, you know, just like a foil to the drone. lots going on right there. I think I just a little bit right here. I was originally taught this EQ technique from, it was this little church in my hometown. I was probably, I must have been a junior or senior in high school. But they'd pay you $60 and you come and you do their practice and you do the service on Sunday. And I would do the sound, and it was with a guy who was probably, I don't know, twice my age now. And he was just a cool dude, and he kind of showed me the ropes, and it was this crazy soundboard that was half digital, half analog, which I had not seen at the time. I remember plenty of one or the other, but never saw both. And it was for vocals. We would do this technique, and we'd go and we'd eliminate like the funky sound of the vocals. And what's interesting about that is each performance is a little different. So even though you could set like, okay, here's our template, you'd still have to reset it for each day just because the voice is a little different. That's it's kind of like a neat thing. I remember doing that when I must have been 16, 17. And we can do our low pass. That's what this one's for. I'm not hearing a huge consequence with this one. Let's just... yeah, I don't like that though. So we're cutting this so close on that one. We saw a glitch. We're going to go ahead and save. We still got to name this thing. Man, I got a tickle in my throat today. On the last one I said, anyone comment, I mean, it's pretty much yours. Yours the name. So, we'll see. Maybe someone will come around. But, yeah, if you want to name this thing, I mean, hell, we'll do it again. Throw it in the comments on this one. Pardon me. I guess we didn't need it on this one either. So now we're going to be looking at this kick. And I think it gets the busiest somewhere in here. Going on bypass. So this is something I kind of pre-decided as we were going through the last one, is you always have to decide, like, where do you want each of these pieces to fit? As you can tell, this kick is a very punchy kind of kick. It's really not super subby. There is some other subby elements. But when I was doing the bass stuff, the bass bus, I really was noticing that I was like, dang, these need to be in that super sub level, because it's not going to fit very well trying to fight with all these percussive things. So we're going to be leaning a little bit heavier on our shelving here. Again, we're not trying to do it to taste, but in a tie, we're going with cutting more, just because we want to leave a little bit of room for the bass to come in later. So I think somewhere in there, there's a lot of boominess down here that we don't need, but we start losing a lot of the core of it. We start getting more of just the overtone. and I have a feeling this will be a good example of how things play in the mix. So like, we have a lot of the high end preserved on this, but we really don't need it. We might find that this, in the percussive string of drums that are going on, that maybe the high end is kind of covered by something else, and this is just adding noise to that, so we can always go back and kind of adjust it as we go. And I have a feeling the high end on this is something to consider. Really not that bad of a sound. Cut a little bit out there. Alright, even that might be a little excessive. Let's peak it up. Alright, to be fair, I don't think we need it. And it's kind of in the mids, which we probably won't be missing too much. I have a feeling this is going to be pretty... I don't want to say the word saturated because it's a music term, but I think that will be covered. I think you could hear a little bit, you could tell a little bit on that one. And here's off. I think you gotta know what you're listening for in order to find that though. The sub drums would be next, so let's go ahead and pop those open. We'll turn it on. And we got to figure out where do we want to play it from. Oof, you know, if I put it on the mixer and I click here, I think it might go away. So we're going to keep it over here. Sub drums. Let's go ahead and do the back half of the chorus, just because I know when it comes back in, so we'll have the There's a lot of big sub on that. Sub that I'd like to preserve. Alright, I'm thinking somewhere around there. I think everything up to like 10K is somewhat useful in this. I'm thinking somewhere in there might be a good ballpark. lot of random noise in there. Maybe cut a little more than that. Just a funny ringing. What's going on with this area? There's a lot of trouble. We're going to scan just to refresh the ear a little bit. We're going to do a little bit more of a broad stroke, something like that. I'm going to take a little bit of this off just for fun. Basically, by this point, the only sound that I'm really hearing coming through is ch, boom, ch, boom, boom, ch. So it's that ch. That's really what's reverberating a lot. And so that's kind of what this is cutting off, is anything that's not useful past that. And this is just a little bit of clickiness. A lot of low end, but to be fair, this sub drum is actually 3 different sounds that are playing in sequential order, so it is a lot going on, which is why it's a little bit funkier of an EQ. If you wanted to go super duper precise, you could break these out in separate channels. I just don't think it's really worth the they're not going to gain as much as the time that there is to lose doing absolutely everything. Even this, if I really was in a pinch and I had something that had to be done in an hour, I would absolutely EQ and compress just the buses, and that's like a cheat. It's not going to work as well. So, because I feel like going through these individually is going to provide enough of a positive gain that it's worth spending an hour doing. Hear how much more sub there is with that drum one. Oh, I guess it doesn't come in at that point. Sorry. Dang, that is a hefty cut. But earlier, if you noticed, I did put it with the kick, because what I can hear from this already is that is going underneath the kick, and that is our lowest drum next to the kick, which is usually the lowest drum. So as long as it's underneath that kick, then I think we'll be okay, and we can have the bass take over that sub. And since this bass is bust on its own, I really feel like we can do a little bit extra to push it. So we have like a really strong, tight bass, and then the percussion is a little bit looser, and it's a little bit more in like the mid range, and it's providing a lot of like, it's providing I don't know, I guess the texture is the correct word. I don't know what I'm talking about sometimes. We're on to the snare. And we did something cool with the snare. And there's a volume automation that makes that sing a little longer. And I think we're going to end up doing a delay on that snare. And I'm going to leave a note because I don't know if we'll get to it today. But I would love to see auto delay last note snare. Something like that. And we're going to remember to set the color. We're going blue because it's the note. So now we have that on there. And then the reason I do it like blue and I'll do it after all this is because it's like right on top. You see it, it stands out. You go, oh yeah, I have a note here. So before we get too far, we'll be able to do that. But today, EQ, we can do compression. We're happy. That's all we need. I think there's some healthy stuff down there. That was a big glitch. We might be earning ourselves a crash, so we just gotta keep that in mind and save all the time. We could do one more. We just scan it and we don't need it, we don't need it. Yeah, I'm thinking one more. Because I really like the tightness of this and the fundamental. I even gave a little extra. I rounded the other way because I liked it so much. Let's hear it in context with the next part. Oh, it's not on the next part, is it? Alright, we're on to the action strikes. And notice I grabbed that little double up part because I just want to have a little diversity in it. So I know that's like going to be the heaviest part probably on this whole track. So we're going to go ahead and get that in there so we can listen to that as we go through the EQ. What's interesting, so this is a great example of, we're really using this for the upper end of it, but there's so much sub. Don't get me wrong, we'll keep a little bit of it. but we really don't need that much. This is a great example of the sub being controlled. So here's off. Or now it's on. Pretty crazy. I'm just going until we notice a difference. I think this is a pretty safe range. Let's say this whole section can get a little bit. Said a little bit. It did a lot. This can take some. Sorry, fiance. He's grocery shopping and sending me pictures. I'm taking some of this too. Put the frequencies in the bag. Let's listen to that in context. I'm actually going to give a little bit more on the top. Big difference in the sub. So especially those low notes, I don't know for sure, but the lowest note is a C. So it makes me wonder. And I'm talking about the bass, which I have a stand-up bass in the back, and the lowest note is an E. So it makes me wonder, it's like, did they have a 5-string stand-up to sample this? Is that how that's supposed to work? If that is the case and they had a 5-string stand-up, why didn't they go to B? Why would they leave the lowest note out? So I don't know. Maybe it's a little synthesized too, but just a kind of funny note. So those lower C's are very low, and I think they're gonna need that sub presence in order to not get washed out completely, because there's like a bump 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 bump. So that the pokiness of that part is gonna stand out okay, and that's one thing to process. But that bump 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 bump, it's like bump 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 bump. That part's gonna be much more difficult, and I'm just kind of planning to have that space available for when it needs it. And let's see here. So let's take a look at these. So this is going to be an interesting one, because now we have something that is not so low, and it's doing like a 16th note pattern, and it's all kind of centralized around that bop 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 bop. So this is doing something a little different, and this is staying a little more traditional over here. And I think this is the best example. I don't remember making big adjustments on this one. So we're going to go and say, we could just take O. Let's do the last half, something like that. Because I can't see it when that's in the way, but I know, yeah, that's fine. We'll just take it from there. And I'm not as worried about getting rid of the low on this, because this is more of a mid-range instrument. At least in the way that we're using it. And we want to give it kind of its own unique spot to live, because the kick confluence with this is so high that if the kick was doing everything that this was doing, you would never know this exists. So we're trying to give it its own little pocket of sound that this can live in, so when the kick and it are going, they sound separate. So when they do play in confluence, it's not going to be, you know what I mean? It's going to be two separate sounds that you hear and audibly know are going on. The trick is, with a lot of bass, it's omnidirectional. You really don't know left, right. It's just there. I mean, I suppose you could hard pan it, but for the most part, it's gonna kind of sound like it's coming from the same spot. It's the higher frequencies that have a stronger sense of direction that you'd actually be able to tell this is where this is coming from. I don't remember the exact one. I think it's like below like 180 or something like that. The wavelength is, I don't know, greater than the distance of ear to ear, so the panning doesn't work. You'd have to talk to a doctor. I don't know. There's a video from the bases of Tesseract talking about that, and I thought that was super cool. And if you know the band Tesseract, then you're super cool as well. I almost feel like it got more power the more I cut off the highs. say somewhere around there is good. We'll even draw it in just a little bit. Let's see here. The last one's a little questionable. A little questionable. There's something a little weird about that, but you know, I'm not super positive that it's super necessary to cut it, so we're gonna just do a lighter cut. Again, not a huge presence difference, but I had the kick running the whole time. So let's go ahead and go back and do that again, because I didn't realize I had it playing with something else. Oh well. Yeah, so that low end is pretty useless to us. I would say that's gone. That's light. And that's like heavy for cutting it. So we're gonna go, I'm gonna say somewhere right there. Another big glitch. I feel a crash coming, folks. Let's see, so that's about right there. Can't believe we did it with the kick playing the whole time. Oops. I thought it was funny that the more I cut it, the more the more of the kick's lower overtones were coming through, I think. Because I was like, it's like when I cut it, it's getting stronger. Oh, that's why. In hindsight, it makes sense. I have a feeling there's going to be trouble in these frequencies, and I might as well just do a big one. Now let's bring in the kick. So we could tell the separation is a little different than we have it off. First off, it's definitely more bassy. So let's put it on the kick. Yeah, when we take off the low end of the 16th drum, it's not competing nearly as hard If we wanted to really accent the 16th, we would go back into the EQ here, and we would kind of start notching out positions that the 16th is excelling in. So we could take like this, and we just give a little bump, so it has like it's fundamental covered, and then the 16th obviously is like up somewhere in this range, so we could duck this range a little bit. Matter of fact, we talked about at the 300 there was some weirdness going on, right? Yeah. Let's go ahead and just give it a little something, a little what's two, and let's jump back in there. It's so easy to get lost in the sauce and start doing stuff to taste, but we're looking for function on this one, so we got to keep it moving. I already feel like I can hear the 16th drums a little clearer. It's pretty washed out mix though. Back to the earlier verse. Okay. So I feel like they come out much better there, and then by the time that everything's in, it's a little bit more in the background. You can still tell it's there if you remember it from earlier, but it's definitely not filling up like it's not like the very forefront of it, which is where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be more of just keeping the whole percussion section moving, which by that point the kick is doing a lot more movement and stuff like that, so it's a little bit less of a big role to fill, but it fills it nonetheless. Let's see, where's our time at here? 47 minutes. Dang, we were not even through the percussion. I'm just talking too much. Let's knock some of this out real quick. So we're looking at the wood block. I think somewhere around there is fine. I think the lower note is a little bit more dominant with the lows there, but look how much we cut off. All this wasn't really adding a whole lot to what we needed there. Let's look at a low pass here, all the way up. This one had quite some funky sounds. And it's interesting how little we actually are using of that. This is a little bit of a headache sample here. A little bit of a headache sample. That's okay. So I kind of increase the bandwidth just to share that little bump out. I did not like that sound. Okay, something like that. Could have even done it before the E at the reverb. Because I know these are given a little bit more than just a room. They're a little bit more to the texture of it, which you can kind of tell the wood block versus this is like a much more close up, like slap, and this is much more of a space. So they're very different sounds. Speaking of, we're on to the cello. Get a little ugliness there. Get a little something there, but it's not something that's so bad. That's much uglier. A little lower than that even. Thinking somewhere like that range. Let's see. I think that's pretty fair. This is the freaking hearing test. How's your left ear versus your right ear? Okay. Just taking out everything here. A little harsh for what it was. Oh, let me get a low pass on this real quick. These glitches, though, they're catching up with us. We're going to take a big cut out of a lot of this. Kind of funny the difference in the graphs, huh? Took a lot more, well, a little bit different. And now we're at the basses. Matter of fact, let me refresh my beverage. Oh, we listened to the sick bass line that pretty much repeats itself through the whole thing. There's a little bit of variance. And I need a cough mic or something where so I can make sounds like this, and you don't have to deal with it. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and open up the sub. So we'll do I'm gonna say like around 40 maybe, and that's even cutting it a little crazy. Just because we have pretty much carte blanche to whatever we want the low end on this. All this could go out. What's kind of neat is we have the opportunity with this one, since we're doing a bass bus and we're really stacking the bass with the tuba, like the way that modern bass is handled in like rock tracks is a split, so you have a low bass and like a high bass that are processed independently. and then blend it back together. And in general, with this like kind of track, I might not even just do that. The double bass is just this big low thing, but we are doing a bass bus, and so I was considering maybe going into split those, and I could use like guitar rig 6, I think I have. I go to guitar rig and I could split the channels and just do some basic stuff on them. Obviously, it would not be like a rock one, but that's something I'm kind of considering as something to play with here. So we have some of that honk that we need with especially with the tuba, and then we have that really clean compressed low end. Thinking somewhere in this range. Dun 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 dun. Get rid of a little bit of that. And my final trick, we'll do a little pass, which I should have done earlier. See how it comes in with it. You can hear how different it sounds with the tuba. And so in this case, the tuba is kind of the trebly part that's going to stand out, and then the double bass is providing a lot of the lower end. So this one I'm not too afraid to remove a little bit more of the subs if need be. If not, great, more the merrier on this bass bus. Yeah, see, not super active. So let's go ahead and move this. Something. I'm gonna say around like the 60s is where I start feeling like I'm losing something. This one, I think we're gonna give a little bit of sub because it needs something. This one's very honky, but it is a horn. one point I dated a tuba player and it did not work out. So ever since then I've been a little bit cautious about the tuba. You might even be able to say a little presumptuous. But in this case, I think it's working out for us just fine. I like the I don't know, like the rippiness of the horn paired with the double bass. Sounds nice. Sounds nice. Or maybe it's just Stockholm syndrome from listening to this song for so many hours. Let's see. Now we are on the piano, which was kind of a last minute addition for us. We weren't expecting to put a piano in this. And for this one, actually, I think we're going to put this early. I'm going to turn all this off, and then we can do another one after. We were really just using this as a way to write the harmonies, but you know, I thought it would be a nice little texture to have included. I don't think we need that throatiness there. Which I know I said we're not doing anything for taste. That one was 100% for taste. It's because I know there's the honkiness of the horns on the bass I didn't want to interrupt. I'm getting some funkiness in here too. When I moved it, I could really tell. You know what? We're going to double down on this one. Really cut a little more out of there. Alright. Now that we got that, let's add the flavor back. You know, I had joked before that it's two people on the bench. Now that I'm really thinking about it, I'm like, why do we need the bass part on this? We really could use the top melodies when the chorus is blasting, and in that first one, maybe do the bottom. I think that might be a better use of the allocation sonically. Let me see. Yeah, there's no use to have that low part on this one. So let's go ahead, we're going to glue it so it's one big item for us to mess with. And we know that these are its own things. So now it's just playing the top part. And if we hop over here, Where's our B section? Interesting. This would signify it is just one person playing, I guess. Oh, oops. My bad. We were looking at the wrong spot. And so... So for the first one, let's remove the mid. So it's just this, both harmonies. And then in the chorus, we'll have it double up this. So massively different now, which means for the low end, we're going to have to go to this part. So a lot of this is much less necessary. Have to save it. Got another glitch. I'm still getting funniness in this area. I'm just going to do a little bit heavier of a cut because this isn't going to be helping us with the part that it's in right now. As long as it doesn't hurt this too much, we're in good shape. Yeah, I feel like net it is cutting some of the extra air out. Okay. That's problematic. So we can cut this a little bit too, but it's not nearly as bad as this. This was truly bad. Yeah, I remember this one is a lot in the lingers where it stands out. So its position isn't just in the frequency range, but it's also in time. So it's like this one kind of, I gave it a little bit elongated parts, especially between the like ba-da-dum, 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 like in between those, it's holding where the other ones aren't. And so that's really where this one's going to shine. And we did all that EQ, or we did all that reverb and the delay. and another reverb, and so that is all giving it just a much bigger ambiance, and that's really the position for that piano. Whereas like the synth trumpets, that's a much different tool, which might be completely dry right now. Let's see. Oh yeah. Which the cool effect of this is paired with the regular trumpet. I feel like it gave the trumpet the sound of it blasting. Almost like it's playing so hard that it's just there's something else there. It seemed to work. We were having a lot of trouble getting these trumpets to work. But I'm happy with this. That's funny. Where's the EQ on that one? Pretty identical, but we will leave it be. Let it have its moment. Now let's go to the trumpet 2, which these trumpets are a little bit crooked. It's a little bit goofy the way that it got set up. Sorry about that. Trumpet 2, I believe, is doing lower harmony or lower octave. So they got sent to different places. Let's see here. Yeah, a little something in there. What's funny is in my head, I really imagine these trumpets just taking the lead and being an easy instrument to plug and play. Man, they were difficult. And then the saxophones were easy. I was like, dang, I should really get more sax in these things. The sax are bone dry. They sound great. Easy to program. No problem at all. But that's kind of why we experiment, is now I know that the saxophones are cash money. Let's see here. Gotcha, gotcha. Let's go to this one. I don't think we need a lot of the lower part of that. Let's cut out a lot of that. Maybe not just a little bit. Let's see. I don't think I'm missing much by putting it there. Less impressive on the trumpet there. I'm thinking something like that. We can bump this up so it's a little more parallel there. There we go. That one was a little questionable where I just put that one. I can live with it. Because I'm going to cut this pretty heavy here too. What about a low pass? I said put in that pocket right there. So without, with. Very, very small changes. But hopefully what will happen is later down the line when we go ahead and start doing some of our bus compression and we're doing like our mastering chain and maybe we have like a multi-band compressor going, like when we start getting more of these elements, it's not going to pull some goofy super low tone that's coming from the trumpet and pull that in with the bass. That's the idea, is we're kind of setting up these building blocks that down the line will pay off with a more professional sound, even though they're very subtle, which is why this video kind of sucks. Sorry. But we're getting there. Once it's done, it is worth it to have it done. And like I said, when you get to the end, it does sound different. I mean, that maybe would be a fun comparison, is we'll go to the end, we'll turn off everything, and then we'll turn it back on, and we'll go, dang, I like it better with nothing on there. I don't know. Just teasing. I'm making jokes in a room by myself. That's a safe call for that one. Ooh, it's not liking that. What I will say is this is the exact case where we're leaning up, because this is part of the melody. It's going to naturally be a little bit deeper in there anyways. Even if we cut out all the lows, you could tell this is going to be a deeper instrument. So a lot of the air is already moving on the bottom end. I'm not too worried about saving the super lows, as long as it feels like it's under the trombone. It's going to have kind of the same trick as with the sub drums and the kick, where it's like as long as it's under here, relatively, it will sound deep. I think with this, it's going to be kind of the same setup, where it's like the tenor trombone is doing its thing. The baritone one just needs to be underneath, but a lot of it's going to be in the overtones. That's what we're going to actually get from this. That is the purpose behind the channel. Like, we don't want to completely kill the low end, because that is what the instrument is. But this is the exact time to cut lows. Oh, that was pretty crappy. I'm gonna do wide bandwidth on that one. Bringing that up just for the clarity at the top end, just because we feel like it. So just to see if this makes any more sense, is like you could hear the baritone trombone. I mean, let's just put another low pass on or high pass on there real quick. You could tell those frequencies are different than the timbre of those frequencies without even anything else. So that's what I'm kind of saying about, like, it's going to give bass no matter what. But we just want to make sure it's just feeding right under that trombone. Let's listen to the... No, we're still missing these. See, it keeps doing this. A meter peak of 272. What are you talking about? What happened to the bassoons? And how come I'm not deaf? If that is the truth. Something's funky's going on with this track, and I don't know what instrument is kicking it out, but something's being a little silly. Let's see. We are on the baritone sax. These sax were very easy to work with. Sound great. You know, I'm getting a call. We're going to do a brief intermission for your YouTube watchers. It'd be like nothing ever happened. And we're back. Apologies about the wait there. Let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. get little ghosty kind of sounds that don't need. A little tinniness there. Yeah, I'm getting a little more there. You can kind of hear its position in relation to everything else. Let's see. I think I lost a little of the honkiness in it. I think is what I was picking up as tinniness. Completely bone dry. I think some reverb will really add a big change to this. Okay. Let's see. So we've gotten through everything except for the bassoon and clarinet. Let's give that a listen real quick. All right, time for the bassoon. Some, I don't know if it's against YouTube regulations or whatever, but it's got some balls on it. That's got a lot of kick. It's got a lot of kick. Ooh. I like whatever's there, dude. That is some get up and go. I am into that. Yeah, I think that's a problem, and I think this is also going to be a problem. Let's go something like that. I feel like it might be more crucial to do the low pass after the high pass, just for getting your mind right with some of these mids. I don't want this interfering with what I'm hearing over here, if possible. Wow, what a big lower end. All I gotta say about that. Interesting. I have the bassoon doing the main line, which is contrapuntal to the baritone sax. But this is reinforcing the main idea, so it has its purpose. Let's see. Clarinet. That is next. Ah, I must have missed the keystroke there. There's a lot of jingle jangle going on, so let's check this out. Well, I guess the proper way to do it. Let me make a new high pass. A lot of these really high frequencies, they're kind of coming through is almost like a fairy dust kind of sound in my mind. So that's something I don't want. But too much, and we start covering up or like blanketing the part itself, which we don't want to hinder that, especially with the flute layer, because the flute and the piccolo are supposed to be very trebly. Maybe we'll switch this up. Let's try it just around here. I know I'm hurting at the low end when I do that, so I don't want to do it too hard. We'll just do something like that. Oof, there's something ugly in there for sure. Alright. We're gonna drop this just a hair. Why? Because we're crazy. That's just what we want to do. There we go. We really went nuts. Oh, that's the clarinet. I thought it was the flute in my mind when I was doing that. I was like, what is going on? I was really tripping on that one. I was like, what the heck? Okay. I guess maybe I was just excited. I was like, oh, I'm almost done. Alright. Let's now go to the piccolo, and then we'll end it on the flute. For real this time. Let's see here. I think that's a pretty safe bet. I'm gonna say around there is fine. It's really resonating there. How nice. I love the piccolo. I don't know why. I think that's just with the flute. It's an especially good pairing. Let's listen to this section though, because this is going to be a little bit more telling for a lot of those parts. got that big evil sound. Hold up. We had the glitch. And it hit our tuba. I don't know why. But let's start it from the top. And let's see where we're at time-wise. 16 minutes, so I know we're over an hour. So we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this guy up. So let's take it from the top and see where we're wrapping this one today. And then we'll come back for the compression on the next one. That's kind of what the note was about. That's tight. Oh, but that's on the bus, isn't it? Okay, we're safe. I just wanted to make sure it was after. Yeah, that's cool. Very subtle. But if you know, you know. That is a neat little automation just to make it a little bit more interesting. We could do the sound effects, but the sound effects are kind of picked on their EQ, and it generally becomes kind of a conglomerate of different channels playing different effects, and each one is completely independent. So it ends up being a little bit more piece by piece, and the samples are picked specifically because of where they're hitting. So that's not one that I'm too worried about. If we really did need, well, of course, I'm using battery right now, so I'm just doing that, but I can, render it in place. So I think we're gonna leave off that for the moment, and as well as the buses. And once we get each individual thing, just with their just a teeny bit of compression on there, I think at that point we will have a much more even kind of thing to play with. I think that's going to change the overall sound, and at that point then we will really dig into each bus and kind of mixing the layers in between, because we have, in the melody alone there's a ton, and so I want to make sure that all is very present. You can hear everything, and then it has reasonable places, and then add in the next element like the percussion and be like, okay, now what is the relationship here? Can we still kind of hear each individual thing? But yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. It's been a pleasure. I believe this is the 29th episode, so the next one will be 30. That is crazy. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions or if there's anything I can help with. If you have any suggestions, anything like that, I'd love to hear it. There's also a like button if you want to show some support, and a subscribe button for catching the next one as you hit the notification. On the next one, we will be doing compression. Today, we really just knocked out the EQ. When you do projects with these many tracks, man, it is brutal on the length. The length of just doing something so simple. to go across all of these and just do something just very, very simple. You're not changing a whole lot. You're just kind of cutting out unnecessary stuff. It takes a while. I mean, we're working with 35 tracks with the bus. I mean, it could be worse. I probably have done similar on the other songs I've done, but all right. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.